And thank you so much, Lucy. The session is being recorded and will be made available at a later date. So as you know, all attendees are muted. If you have questions during this plenary for the panelists, please use the chat box feature, either in the Q&A or chat on Whova or in the chat here in Zoom. And my last note is just one more statement of thanks. Thank you to our generous sponsors for making this year's forum happen. And thank you to our brilliant forum planning team, our incredible staff at the Alliance who've chipped in so many ways, our presenters who are the heart and soul of this event, and finally you, the attendee, for creating the magic that is the forum. And thank you for showing up this year with us. All right, so I am going to move on to an introduction of our moderator for today's panel. It's my pleasure to introduce Denisse Guitarra. Ella is the Maryland Conservation Advocate at Audubon Naturalist Society. In her role, she advocates for environmental policies centered around climate change, environmental justice, and sustainable land use. Recently, she has led campaigns on forest conservation, transportation, climate change, and land use plans. Denisse oversees and manages ANS's Latinx community outreach and engagement programs at Long Branch in Silver Spring, Maryland, and in Prince George's County, Maryland. She's from Ecuador and holds a bachelor's in biology from Hood College and a master's in biodiversity, wildlife, and ecosystem health from the University of Edinburgh. Welcome, Denisse.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and to the Alliance, and welcome everybody to today's plenary on Zero to Advocate, including Latinx voices. In today's plenary, we'll be exploring and learning about Latinx leaders and how to engage with the Latino community in policymaking. And so it's my pleasure to introduce today's panelists. First up is Vanesa Pinto. She is the Empowerment Leadership Development Coordinator at CHEER, which stands for Community Health and Empowerment Through Education Research. She organizes CHEER's programming involving community building and networks that support Long Branch communities in Maryland. And previously, she was an accountant in Bolivia. She has volunteered with different community organizations along Long Branch and Silver Spring, including the YMCA, Linkages to Learning, the PTA at Rolling Terrace. And she also organizes a weekly food distribution with that serves more than 500 families along Long Branch. It's my pleasure to have her today. I will also introduce our next speaker, who is Abel Olivo, him. He is a co-founder and executive director of Defensores de la Cuenca, which is a nonprofit organization, very new, and he is a dedicated promoter of the environmental education access to nature for the well-being of the Latino communities. A longtime resident of the Washington, D.C. area, Olivo has supported many organizations with his insight in government affairs, education, and environment. Most recently, he, of course, has co-founded Defensores de la Cuenca to increase the Latino access to the region's watershed and popular understanding of watershed ecology. He draws on many years of experience as a lobbyist, community activist, and a stay-home dad for his role. Welcome, Abel. And next up, we have Ramon Palencia-Calvo. He is a director of Chispa, Maryland. In 2014, Ramon launched Chispa Maryland, a Latino grassroots program of the Maryland League of Conservation Voters education fund that creates to ensure the Maryland Latino families and community leaders are a powerful voice in protecting their rights to clean air and water, healthy neighborhoods, and safe climate generations to come. Ramon has partnered for over 10 years with the Latino community groups, faith groups, grassroots organizations, legislators, in efforts to identify environmental issues facing the Latino communities to increase their political participation and promote community-driven solutions. As director of Chesapeake, Maryland, Ramon has developed and implemented issue organizing campaigns that have led to local and statewide victories across for new Latino leaders in Maryland. So thank you everybody for coming here today. Right before we get started, we are just going to have some community agreements put in the chat box. We all want to have a positive experience today. Step up, step back. If you're maybe putting too much questions, give others to also give a chance to ask questions or put comments. Freedom of expression, allow people to be their full selves in expressing comments or questions. Connect with others, make the best use of the chat box and all the different features that the Alliance has provided for all of us to connect during and after the panels. And, don't make assumptions. And with that, we're going to get started. So thank you so much to all of our panelists for being here today. And I think I'm just going to get started, by asking if you can share a little bit with the audience about the different projects that you work with the Latino communities as part of your organization.
May I start?
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry. Okay. Cheers is a grassroots organization, and we have 4 areas in Cheers. So it's empowerment and leadership development, health programs, housing and community development, and youth development. My area is the empowerment and leadership development. I'm the director of the programs. So lately, we've been we have 3 main projects that we are working on. First is the community leadership. We've been working with a parent leaders group. Their name is Conexo. They decided the name. There's another group, Las Jardineras, so the gardeners. So it's promoting leadership through gardening. And the other project is community advocacy. So we've been organizing community advocacy walks. So where community comes together and they are the presenters of the problems, the situations that they would like to change to outsiders, like can be delegates or government agencies that we invite. That's, yeah, and the last one is youth development. Through using this participatory action research is how we've been working with the youth leaders group. Their name is Bridge of Hope and Equity, this boy. And they will be working on with this tool, the PAR to participatory action research, and the workforce development. That's something that we started. I personally started working more with youth when the pandemic hit, and it was last year when we started this the food distribution since I'm managing that. I have many of these teenagers working with me, and it's how we started. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Vanessa. Abel?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Denisse and fellow panelists for inviting me to participate with you. My name is Abel Olivo. I'm the executive director of Defensores de la Cuenca, which means watershed defenders. We work to engage Latinos and Spanish speakers in watershed-related issues. And we do that by creating opportunities for people essentially to have fun in nature, in the environment, and have positive experiences. All with the idea or the goal of creating continued interest to build opportunities for leadership so that there are more Latinos, Latinas in this space leading the way, inviting people from their community to have these same experiences, and bridging that gap from participant to steward to then advocate. We are working right now on our big project, which is La Academia de Defensores, which is a watershed stewards model that trains participants over a period of time to become more knowledgeable on a series of topics related to the watershed. And then at the end of that time, they will create a capstone project. Each participant will be supported with a stipend of $1,000 for lost wages, childcare considerations, transportation costs, and will be supported with up to $5,000 for the project. And the idea is that we are working to create a more knowledgeable set of folks, and then they will then use that information to develop a project that is very specific, very developed with their priorities in mind. Because all too often we are working with organizations or entity that have a goal, right? And it's their goal. So this is really working to establish a base of knowledge and then encouraging people to use their knowledge to set their own goals, to set their own priorities, and then create a project around that. To support that, we engage people, recruit people through events, through smaller events, through fishing activities, hiking, cleanups, tree plantings, etc. And then this year, we're really excited to announce the development of Campamento de Defensores, which is a family camp that is a 5-day immersive experience for families. And we'll have more information about that. But the idea is that we will bring families together to allow them to have this really rich and wonderful experience together. Thank you again, Denisse, for the opportunity, and Ramon and Vanessa and the Alliance for this great session.
Great, thank you, Abel. And those sound like very exciting new projects that I personally want to learn more about. And with that, let's hop on to Ramon.
Thank you, Denisse, and of course, thanks to the Alliance for putting this panel together and all the participants. Again, Ramon Palencia from LCV Chispa, Maryland. Chispa is a Latino power building program of LCV, and we work with community members to ensure that they have a strong voice to advocate on the issues that they care, that they're really invested on. So as far as the projects that we do and some of the work that we do, I guess for us it's very important, to provide those educational opportunities that really connect the environment with other core issues that some of the community members, some of the families that we work with are facing, how the environment connects to their health, the health outcomes, how the environment connects to the pocketbook, the economic opportunities in their community, sustainability in their community, making those connections through education for us, it's very important. Sometimes families come from very different backgrounds, and make sure that there's that opportunity to be exposed to this knowledge is very important for us. And with that, another type of projects that we do are community activities, as Abel was and Vanessa was saying. Is very important to have positive experiences in the community. It's very important, community members sometimes have very active and busy lives, so those opportunities to really connect with nature, decompress, and have that positive experience is very important. So we do a number of those, again, that goes anywhere from cleanups, boat rides up and down the Anacostia, so they can be more knowledgeable about their own background, and many of those outdoor opportunities. And then another program that we have is our Promotores training. So, when folks go through all these activities, it comes a point that they really want to gain more leadership, more knowledge. So we have this Promotores training, which is a train-the-trainer type of model, where those folks that have been participating in some of the activities that we put together, they go through a 20-hour training. where they talk about, it's an opportunity to build our own, what brings us together, what makes us a community, identify some of the needs, really understand how the structures of power work in this country, in their communities, in the state, in their county. Also understand, how can we better come together and organize to build power, to again have that strong voice to advocate for the things that are most important to community members. So that's our promotores training, and we started, I believe, in 2015, 2016, and we graduated around 100 plus promotores, and they're both youth and parents. We work with both youth and parents. And again, and finally, another thing that I might add is, opportunities to advocate. It's very important, to support their power building efforts. So, through our organization, we can provide those opportunities to advocate for increasing their capacity, making sure that they have those opportunities is very important for us. So, through our advocacy campaigns and other advocacy activities and advocacy trainings, that's the third part that I will bring in. So it's just that, those education opportunities, power building through our leadership building through our trainings, and then those opportunities to advocate, that again is advocate on the issues that they identify and they want to advocate on.
Awesome. Thank you, Ramon. Thank you, Vanessa and Abel. I mean, everything that all of you do with the respective communities that you're working and serving is just such an amazing job that you are all doing. But of course, all of this work has stemmed from the community members themselves, because without them, we can't do anything really. So I know that in the different programs that that all of you have mentioned, you already see that community members are already advocating for themselves. So I kind of wanted to poke this around a little bit more and see if you can explain maybe how community is already advocating for themselves and in different ways, and how maybe they're kind of translating those skills in different types of advocacy. Specifically the environmental advocacy, but perhaps that's, not the core of it, of how they started advocating.
Okay. Again, where's the button? Thank you so much. I'm so happy that, and yes, I think this is an opportunity to tell you, because since sometimes we don't have time to chat or to see each other and to share the experiences that are going on with our own organizations, ourselves, our perceptions. So I've been hearing more, and I'm so happy that the word advocating, the word leadership is in our vocabulary most of the time, because that's something that is missing in our communities. So what we do normally when I'm with people, because I'm so grateful for that. I've been outside, even with the pandemic. Yes, taking the risk of many things, of course, preventing things, trying to prevent things, but I was outside working with community. The food distribution side that we have was, I think, the best excuse for us as cheer to meet with community. And yeah, so and I am with them, with people. So the message is that we help people feel more enabled to take control of their own lives and provide the practical support to overcome health and social care issues. So this approach is equipping people with the knowledge and skills to be their own best advocate. So they're gonna do it, like eventually they're gonna do it. And we're just like, when I'm in meetings with them, I'm saying, I'm just a facilitator here. I'm just helping coordinate this can be connected. So I already talked to about a leaders group that we have. And maybe some of them will be leading one of these meetings. And I'm just, we here, except just as facilitator, we're a catalyst in generating these community-driven activities. So they've been doing, and yeah, I think Ramon mentioned something about is looking for those opportunities for people to not only participate, but also realize that they can be part of the planning process, or they can be part of those decision-making groups, but it's little by little. So we've been in this process. This is the great process that we are right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. I would like to add, in terms of like where we see the Latino community advocating for themselves already, during the pandemic, and, Vanessa, as in her group have been doing tremendous work around this. We've seen other groups like Amigos Vicentinos, Guatemaltecos en Frontera, La Clínica del Pueblo, doing work to meet the needs of the community, right, already, with tremendous food distribution and support that folks don't get to receive any other place. So meeting the needs of the community, recognizing what those are, and addressing them in a way that they know how and what's within their power. So we've seen, lots of advocacy groups and a lot of work addressing the needs, the immediate needs of the community. And I think that part of what we've need to overcome or to think about is how to share the idea that can spill over or go into other issue areas, other priorities, and bring awareness around, as Ramon said, the connections to health and the implications of what those are to the community, to their health, to the well-being. So, as you said or suggested, Denisse, the communities are already advocating for themselves on so many levels, and it's really working to bring more resources and build their power and empower them and power share, which is, right, the challenge.
Wow, Vanessa and Abel, you made such great points. So yeah, I mean, let me then just go back a little bit farther back and start by saying, Latinos have been advocating on environmental issues for decades. One of my heroes, Cesar Chavez, for me, is one of the fathers of the environmental justice movement. He fought, he organized farm workers to fight against chemicals and better conditions for them. So that's when some of this movement started. So again, the environment, we've been having those fights and being very active for decades. So the environment provides an opportunity to link perhaps some of those needs. The environment provides that avenue to improve some of the needs that we have in the community, right? If we talk about more opportunities, if we talk about better health outcomes, if we talk about better distribution of resources, that's how we can bring that environmental advocacy to advance those no issues but problems that the community are facing at the, very often. So yeah, I mean, just one last point. Let's remember that environmental justice is not about redistribution of pollution. The factories, the polluting facilities don't come to my community, goes somewhere else, but it's about stopping that pollution and building some other opportunities. And that's what many Latino communities have been doing for decades, trying to bring better opportunities and better outcomes for their families. So I think that that's one of the one of the ways that manifests this advocacy, and we can support those efforts to make sure that again the environment is that vehicle to get ahead and bring more opportunities to their communities.
Wonderfully said, everybody. I think it's so important, especially in the era of climate change nowadays, that we look at problems holistically from an environmental justice lens, and that we not only look at how I guess the environment's impacted, but the people at the core of it, and how everything's interconnected and interrelated. And with that, I think Ramon, you made a good point that, and I think all of you actually, that communities are already advocating for themselves, and they are already coming with a whole set of assets that they can provide to kind of move their communities forward. And I know Cheer in particular has been very keen on kind of promoting this asset-based model into all the programs that they've done across with the community. So perhaps Vanessa, you can speak a little bit more about how you apply that model into the work that you do.
Yeah. So I'll talk about first about the assets that we identify, and then later I'll talk about the model. That's my favorite, I think, part, because I love to be different in some things. Yeah. So communities can no longer be thought as complex masses of needs and problems. But rather it's that the diverse and dynamic webs of gifts and assets. So normally we don't have that approach. So each community has their unique sets of skills and capacities to channel that for community development. So and everything that I'm doing, most of the time I learn from community members. So you all know that each person comes with a set of knowledge and savvy, and like regardless the formal education that they may or may not have. So yeah, so there's so much that we can learn from community members. So there's key assets that we identify. First, and I'm gonna put this, I don't know, I'm very visual. I'm always putting the individuals in the center. So if I'm gonna have a map, I'm gonna put the individuals in the center. So these are residents of the community with gifts and skills. So I will leave the deficits and needs useful for institutions to work on that, but not for the vocabulary I'm gonna use for communities. We are in the center. We are the main asset here. And then we have the associations. So these are small informal groups of people that have some common interest. Like, for example, I already told you Conexo, the parent leaders group, or the gardeners, or there's a neighborhood association here. And this group of youth, the Bridge of Hope and Equity. So those are the associations that we identify as an asset, yeah. And then we have the institutions. We have institutions that in here, I'm in Long Branch. We have really good connection with, for example, the school, New Hampshire State Elementary, Rolling Terrace, that are here and there. So we've been working collaboratively with them. So this can be also government agencies, private business. So their assets help the community capture valuable resources and establish that sense of civic responsibility. And then we have institutions. Sorry, I already talked to them about the institutions, the connections. That's key. So, and we have a really important role. Cheer plays an important role here. We've been connecting not only neighbor to neighbor or helping to connect them, but also we've been helping connect organizations, institutions. We love to do collaboration, for example, in this case, like ANS, or I had the pleasure to work with Defensores of la Cuenca, and pretty soon, hopefully, I'm gonna work with you, Ramon, so, and other organizations. And someone asked about, for example, advocacy. yeah, lately we've been working with Action in Montgomery, AIM. Maybe you have heard about that group that focus on advocacy. So yeah, so little by little we are learning more about how to advocate in another sphere. And yeah, those are the main assets that I think we identified. Thank you.
Great. Ramon or Abel, do you want to add in?
Sure. Thanks, Vanessa. That was great. Again, I think that there's tremendous power in the community, right? Starting from all the organizations that are community-based and community-serving organizations that are doing great work, to the own narrative of community members, you know, the lived experience that they had. I mean, that is very powerful, and that's one of the main assets, a very important assets. But I'll just say, you know, that we need to start building upon those assets rather than trying to create new organizations or create new structures. You know, there's some already structures there, and I think that we need to start working with those, supporting those, as Abel was saying, creating that capacity. When there's already that organization covering that issue, supporting that capacity, it's very important. And one of the things that I want to highlight is, you know, we talk often about the issues in the community, the problems in the community and things like that, but let me just highlight that there's a lot of good things going on in the community, and there's a lot of great organizations working in the community that are made up of community members. So we need to transition and create that movement of strength, continue supporting those so we can build upon those strengths and not trying to bring new things and recreate. What is already working, we need to continue supporting that.
Absolutely, yes. And to that, I think that last points made by Vanessa and Ramon, you know, I guess moving away from, moving towards more of an asset-based model, but away from a needs-based model. How do you, in your experience, kind of protected communities from against extraction, really? As Ramon mentioned, you know, organizations or groups are already doing great work, but sometimes it feels like there's too many things going at the same time, and communities can feel overwhelmed at different time periods by either many projects or many groups, organizations, even government agencies coming at them. What has been your experience of what has worked or hasn't worked that you would like to share with the audience?
I think that, oh, go ahead.
No, please do. Please do, Abel.
Okay, thank you. So I think that getting communication, right? Asking people what their priorities are, right? What is your ultimate goal or your intent? And you as an organization or as an entity, keeping that in mind. Like, obviously you have your priority, your goals, and you need to find common ground or where your goals and priorities overlap. And even if they don't overlap, I think that working to support them in their efforts to achieve autonomy, to achieve successes, to have more resources at hand, and letting or inviting people to know it's okay to say no, right? It's okay to say that's not in my interest, or it's okay to say, you know what, this is gonna take resources and we need to be compensated for it. So helping the groups, the community-based groups, understand or know that it's okay to say no, that it's okay to ask for people to support their efforts specifically, and if someone's coming at you to extract, you know, tell us how to do something, help us bridge this gap, you know, help us do this thing, right? That's very draining. That doesn't really serve the community. It serves your purpose, but it doesn't serve the community purpose. And as Ramon was saying, and Vanessa was indicating, you know, creating the power at that local entity level, at the community-based level, giving or sharing skills around how to organize, perhaps, and power sharing. You know, from my point of view, taking what I have and transferring it over and inviting people into that power space, that decision-making space. And for a lot of organizations, small organizations, that's not easy to do. It's like, oh, I've got such limited resources myself. How am I going to share my resources, right? But I think we need to get over that mentality to say, if you're empowered, I'm empowered. And if we have more community members empowered, we will all be better off.
Thank you, Abel. Now go ahead, Vanessa.
What I was about to say, everything that we do and everything that I do, it's after I ask or talk to the community if this is relevant for you. This is everything changed. Like I cannot assume that everything is being the same. Food, let's say, or this other thing is the main issue. No, it's after we talk to them, and that's why always facilitating listening sessions, community meetings, and then we're gonna create the agenda with them for the next steps or the community advocacy work that we may organize another one, because now we know, and that's really interesting, because thanks to the pandemic, many things like really were exacerbated, like clearly the needs, the problems that we've been having. And unfortunately, Long Branch is known by being in a way has been neglected by the county. And but now they know, like community members know, that by participating in this meeting, by sharing my story, by signing this letter that we send to this. So we are learning the process that it takes for these people with power to really hear what we are saying and why we are saying what we ask. So yeah, that's a note that I wanted to add that there.
Thanks, Vanessa.
So I think that there are two things that for me are very important. And one is, make sure that we break apart with this top-down approach where, we are brought solutions to the community. They're presented with a solution that sometimes they were not part of crafting the solution. They were not, often in times does not even address the core problems that they're facing. But, just the buy-in, we put this is the solution, please support this by taking this specific action, but they're not part of that, of their effort, of the process, they're not being heard, they're not being made part of the process. What is the solution that they want to support? What is the solution that they want to see? So I think that is very important, and that speaks to that we need to work harder to change that ecosystem, to make sure that not just the influential groups and not just the influential folks are the ones that craft the solutions and impose those solutions, but those are community driven. Those are informed by the lived experience of the community, by the assets of the community, and really get to the core of what are the problems that the community is facing and how can that solution really respond to that problem and create opportunity in the community. I think that is key for me.
Yes, indeed. Totally agree what Ramon just said. I think it's so important to create resilient communities so that they can, face the next challenge by themselves. And that way, we build capacity within the community and also create advocates within the community for whatever challenge they face later on as well. And I know we probably have just a few more minutes before we start taking questions from the audience. So I will encourage all of our audience members to continue to put questions in the chat box for our panelists to answer. So I have one more question for our panelists, which is how, I know a lot of the organizations that are here attending the conference today might be interested of some tips that you guys can share that organizations can keep in mind when wanting to share resources with the community.
Yeah, can I? This is something that I really like because yeah, and I would say first of all, it's the approach that we use when we are affected by all these labels like low-income communities, hard to reach community. So those are really, of course, detrimental and don't define the community. So the approach that normally we use is the needs-based approach, right? So if we are gonna talk about what is the main strategy that I use is I use the asset-based approach is what I use. So it's and it has to be, it's a relationship driven. So that's really key. The other thing that I would say is we need more resources. So it's not that we are a needy community, again, with the labels, is that we are underinvested. So these communities are underinvested. And it's so clear. If you count, I invite you to count to Long Branch and you're gonna see the main difference. It's so clear. Going a little farther is Tacoma Park. And you clearly will notice the difference. And the investment part that I'm mentioning. So another thing is the narrative that we use. Normally, it's really focusing, of course, on the needs, the lack of this or this or this. And that's the main thing that you're gonna mention to describe this community. So clearly, seems that we don't know much about that community. Yes, we all have a bias, we all have assumptions, and we don't work on those like trying to really see if that is true. And the only way is going out there, meet them, and work with organizations that are already working like with us. That's something that I'm promoting more and more. And that's how we've been doing different things with, can be Department of Environmental Protection or Montgomery Parks, that we together, like organizations, we can work with your strengths, our strengths together. Of course, we can do much better.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vanessa. Any other tips that you may have, Ramon?
No, I think that Vanessa really captured it. Is really respecting the community, is really making sure that we understand what are the primary needs, what are their needs, and how can we support support those needs. I think that is key.
Great. Abel, any other tips?
I'll let Ramon and Vanessa's wisdom rest on that.
No worries. Okay, so we do have a couple questions for our panelists to respond. So I will start diving into them. And the first one we have is from Aaron. And Aaron's asking, is it recommended to contact existing Latinx advocacy groups about water goals and see if we can find commonality with their core advocacy issues? Abel might want to take that one. Or Vanessa.
I'll just say, is it worth it? I mean, sure, you have to start somewhere, right? You know, have a conversation. And like I said, you know, find out what their priorities are and see if there's overlap in working to achieve those mutual goals. I mean, you have to start somewhere. So reaching out is definitely worth it.
Yeah, it's been interesting the experience that I've been having with an organization where their focus is advocacy or the political levels, and I know that we've been learning from each other a lot since I'm focusing on people, community development. But it's just when we came together and really being transparent and trying to work on communication is where we are like finding common things. And yes, we can do better. Like they can reach their goals, and I'm reaching the goal. The community is reaching the goal. Like I'm just representing the community. So it's been interesting, but it requires a lot of being open-minded, and really that deep dive on what community development means.
Thank you, Vanessa and Abel. Our next question is from Mandy, and she asked, I'm curious about the term extraction. Can you expand a little bit more?
I can take that, I guess. So for me, in this context, what it means extraction is taking from from community members, from other folks, taking and taking, but not giving anything back. It's just, you go to a community and you ask, for instance, related to the previous question, it's good that you ask and it's good that you engage them, but you also got to be ready to provide something, to put something on the table. I'm doing this because I'm happy to compensate you for the time that you're taking to talk to me instead of being with your family. I'm asking you because I know how valuable is the information that you are going to provide me. You've been spending countless hours with community members, talking about their needs, talking about their dreams, and this is what I'm going to ask you about. So I think that is very important. We're extracting, we're taking advantage of their knowledge, we are asking for their knowledge, but if we do not compensate, if we don't bring anything concrete to the table, if I'm asking you this, is because this is what I can provide. This is what I can provide to your community, to the organization. That one-sided is what I refer to as very extractive. And when we don't have that experience working with communities, with a new community that we have never had any contact with them, I think that can be very prevalent, that extractive culture.
Well said, Ramon. Thank you so much. I think the next question is more for Abel, but of course everybody's welcome to chip in. It's from Julie. With the water stewardship training, stipends for participation and funding for projects is a great approach. Do you think everybody should be building funds into their programs to support participants in this way, or set up an application to access funds if needed?
I absolutely thank you, Julie, for that question. I absolutely think the approach is needed and necessary. People have priorities, and we're asking them to shift their priority away from work, away from family, away from church, And those things, you know, we have this precious commodity and it's time, right? And then there's so much that we can do in the day, and recognizing people's lived life experiences, obligations, definitely needs to be recognized with monetary value. Everyone, I think everyone on this panel right now is getting paid to be here, right? Or in this session, right? Was it 117 people? Every single one of you, I'm assuming, or most of you, are getting compensated in some way. We should carry that model, that idea over to the folks that we engage. And on funding, we need to be, as organizations, as entities, we need to recognize the true cost of doing this work. For a very long time, we've the nonprofit world in general has approached it as almost fear. Well, if I ask for too much money, they're not going to give it to me. And because of that, funders have gotten in their head that, oh, well, these organizations, this one said they can do it for $10,000. Well, the true cost of that engagement is like $40,000. It's not, you know, just a little bit of money. So by shortchanging ourselves and by saying we can do it on a shoestring budget, we've given the impression to funders that this can be done on a shoestring, and that's not the case. So Julie, absolutely build that into the budget, compensate people for their time, and funders, if you're on here, get ready to pay up, because this is expensive work.
Vanessa, it looked like you also wanted to jump in.
It's just that I was looking at the other questions that are not answered yet, and I would love to answer. There are two of them.
Go for it. Yeah, go.
Yeah. So one of them says, can you share an example of a time when you helped build community resilience? Yeah. So first of all, yes, we know that we are, that's something that I really like that label. We are a resilient community, but at the same time, sometimes it's overwhelming because it's requiring a lot of you, like you're being beaten and you have all these issues, but you have to be resilient. So at the same time, it's kind of overwhelming. But for example, what we've been doing is gardening, thanks to our colleague, Lisa Butner, who's in charge of this project. They've been like the gardeners I already mentioned as a group that are leading, because they are deciding how they're going to do it. We don't have land. That's another thing, that talking about assets that we don't have, that's something that is really missing, land and community spaces. In here, it's a big need, but they've been able to do it in our neighbors' spaces. So yeah, okay with that. And now we have 3 different spaces. So the comments are, I'm going because I have this space for me only, that I can do what I like, and I can forget most of the things that are really worrying me, let's say. So, and they are working together. Now they are cooking together in a community kitchen that we have. So they have plans for the future. Like they will create a book, they say, with the recipes that they have from their own countries. So little by little, they get inspired by doing something. And you just are a facilitator of opportunities, like doing something like gardening. And the ones that I like really, that activity is really great. So another comment that I see, yes, what is missing within us as organizations that maybe we are doing the same thing, is not, we are promoting communication, we are promoting teamwork and things like that, but how are we doing within us, like organizations? Are we open-minded? Are we open enough to say, okay, let's put our priorities and let's try to find a common goal. And yes, let's serve, we are serving the same community. So we should work together. And It is possible, and it's been working. So that's why I know. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, and thank you to all of our panelists. Really, there were definitely a lot more questions than we had time to answer them, but feel free, to contact all of our panelists. The Alliance has just put all of our emails and our organization's websites in the chat box, both in Zoom and in Whova, so feel free to contact us. I did have one quick question for Ramon. He might be able to answer it. From Sabrina says, Ramon shared that we should create capabilities within present structures. Can you share an example of how we have done that or what we can do?
Yes, very easily. It's the intersectionality of the environment, how for instance, some of the organizations that are already working on immigrant rights, that are working on social justice issues, that are working on advancing education within Latino communities, how can we partner with them? How can we work with them to make sure that the environment is also an avenue to move forward, to advance? And we partner very closely with the Langley Park Civic Association, which is a civic association run by community members. And, we created great programs with them. We support them in some of the programs that are not 100% related to the environment, but they build the capacity in the community. They bring folks together to, as Vanessa was saying, exploring new things, building those relationships that are very important in the community. So that's, might not be 100% environmental related, but if you look at the intersectionality of the environment and environmental justice, you find those organizations that you find that common ground, and you can build those true partnerships that again benefit the community, that advance issues that are the core mission of the community.
Thank you, Ramon, and thank you, everybody. Thank you to our audience for listening and being today's plenary. And with that, I'll hand it over to Jenny.
All right, one last round of applause for our excellent group of panelists and Denisse for being the fearless moderator and leader in today's conversation. As a reminder, we encourage you to rate this plenary. You'll find it on the Whova page, see a button that says rate session. And then also as a reminder, the next set of concurrent sessions begin at 10:15. So we'll see you there. Bye, everyone.